So today what we're going to talk about is a little bit about workflow. Okay, so some of you may be using workflow today. Everybody's using workflow in some capacity today, whether it's an automated electronic workflow or not, right? Anytime you do something and pass a document to somebody else, that's a workflow, right? Different people need to work on different things. So we pass things around. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about workflow. We'll show you, some slides, and I'll also do a little bit of a product demo to show you how easy it can be to configure some workflow utilizing some of the tools available within the OnBase product suite. Okay, my name's Terry Chaudhary. I'm a sales engineer with ImageSoft, and I do a lot of the product demonstrations and a lot of the technical discussions with customers and prospects. So most of you have either heard my voice or have seen me at probably some capacity. I've been with the company almost 5 years now, so I've been all around this great state, visiting everywhere, including the UP. So I've got the pleasure of meeting a lot of you. So if you have questions, you can bring them up at any time. If they're maybe more of a detailed discussion, we may just kind of parking lot them till the end so we can keep moving to get through the material. But feel free to ask them up front while you're thinking of it as we move through the material. Okay, so the number one is, what is workflow, right? It's not just a buzzword, right? You'll hear this anywhere. Any product you talk, any vendor you talk to will all say, oh yeah, we have workflow, we have workflow. Why is that? Because everybody needs it. Right? It's a very important aspect to any type of function, whether it's government work or private sector processing. Workflow is a key. Right? A lot of people are moving into the ECM, that enterprise content management world, where we're taking paper and making it electronic. Right? We're getting rid of the file cabinets, freeing up the space, getting rid of copier costs and printing and all those other things. So there's some investments to be had there just by going to electronic documents. The next evolution, the next step of doing that is to go into workflow, right? The true ROI to get out of a product like OnBase is to take advantage of things like workflow, okay? So this is a way to automate different processes and different things that happen all the time. There's certain things that people do all the time, like when something comes in, one of my jobs is to make 3 copies and then give it to those people, right? Things like that might still have to happen where those 3 people need to see it, but we don't need to photocopy it anymore. The computer can automatically route it to those 3 people. I don't have to walk it over to their desks. There's just so many little things you do on a day-to-day basis that the computer can take over and do those for you, okay? And then you can focus more on what you were hired to do. We want knowledge workers to do knowledge work. We don't want them to be finding documents, creating copies, and emailing things out when the system can do all of that stuff, right? So this is a way to use the automation capabilities within a product to route things. We know things need to be signed, they need to be reviewed, they need to be followed up on, they need to be completed. All of these things are done through a workflow tool, okay? Why do we use workflow? Why are we here today? Well, first of all, you've all decided that technology is a necessary evil, right? We have to go that route to gain the efficiencies. That's the way the world's going. You heard in the keynote, the kids today grow up with electronics, right? They don't know any different. We have to catch up to that because they're the ones who are going to expect this type of service from us. We need to have the electronic things in place so we can handle this. So our goal is efficiency. You'll hear that. Workflow is going to gain efficiencies. Well, why do we want to gain efficiency, right? It'll make your life easier. Right? Your workflow will make things easier to do your job, but the end goal is to save money, right? So we don't need to do so many things the same way. If we can do things, we can get more cases processed. We can save costs on printing. We can save routing costs. We don't have to ship things over to other people to get signatures. A lot of these things, and all that adds up. We don't have to hire extra staff to handle the load. Maybe we have an influx of cases during the summer months, right? We don't need to hire temporary staff to help manage that. The workflow can help us maintain and even kill throughout whatever fluctuations may come about. And that's going to save money, right? So we all know we have budget constraints and things, so we always have to be concerned with how we're spending the money and what we can get accomplished with the tight budgets that were allotted. So one of the biggest points is consistency. Why do we use workflow? Is for consistency. If everybody's doing it the way they want to do it, then there's no way we're going to really improve, okay? So consistency means, let's say I'm a bowler and I want to go and learning how to bowl. It's the first time. Maybe I start on the right side of the lane. Then I start, and next time I'm on the left. Now I'm in the middle. Now I decide to the curveball. There's no consistency there. I'm never going to get better. All right? I'm just changing how I do things, but it's not helping anything. So once you put in, say, you know what? I'm always going to stand at this spot. I'm always going to throw a curveball. I'm always going to aim at that arrow. Once you put those standards in place and you always do that, now you can focus on the minor things, right? How I twist, how much power I put, all of those little nuances now, and I can improve and become a better bowler. Same thing with workflow. You need to put the constraints around there. You need everybody going to the same goal and everybody following the same process. When that happens, you'll be surprised at how quickly things improve. So what are some of the main benefits we're going to get out of utilizing workflow? Well, we've kind of mentioned this now with that consistency where we need to define and structure our processes, right? We go in to talk to prospects and we ask the management, how do you do things today? And they draw us a nice picture of how it works. Then we go sit down with the actual workers and they do something completely different, right? This happens a lot. And the manager goes, wow, I didn't realize that. You know, they're involved to a degree, but they're not in the day-to-day routine. They don't actually do the hands-on that some other people do. So we need to get everybody involved and make sure we're all doing things the same way. We need to put those kind of borders around how we do things and what we can accomplish. It also works to control so nobody can go off and do something that's not been approved as part of your workflow. You're forcing them to do things the same way. Okay? Automatic routing, okay? This is just a way I don't have to walk things around. I don't have to use interdepartmental mail, right? Everyone knows that term, right? I stick it into a box and eventually it makes it over to another building or another room. We don't have to do that anymore. And I don't even need to say, hey, send this over to Joe. I just say, I'm done. The computer knows to go to Joe and will send it to him automatically. Okay? That just saves so much time. You heard him. People spend upwards of 5 hours a day just finding paper. Not even doing your work, just finding the stuff so you can do your work. This is going to eliminate a huge amount of that finding. We take things and we give it to the person. You don't have to go find the work. It's given to you, so you automatically have it in front of you. That leads us to a single interface. Okay? We really want people to be focused in one area. You don't want to have to open up this system here, find some information. Now go to this system to find a document. Now go to the file cabinet here, and now pull up my email to find something else. That's inefficient. Even though maybe you're still sitting at a workstation, pulling up multiple windows is inefficient. And it's, you know, it's tough. Things pop up, it's confusing, you have too many things going. So a lot of times we can have workflow be that single point of interface. The only thing you have to worry about. Let's say a judge is on the bench and they need to see case information from one system, documents inside of OnBase, and a workflow. Well, we could do that all inside one interface. The case data, with the integration, we can have it appear inside of OnBase, so they don't even need that window open anymore. They can see that data, they can see the documents, the related information, and sign everything right there in one interface. Okay? You'll talk to some of the prosecutors if you have a chance. The ones that are utilizing the justice tech portion are utilizing a single interface. The prosecutors themselves, they don't go into the case management system because they don't have to. They get everything they need inside of OnBase. Okay? Rules evaluation. Okay, you'll hear this a lot. There's document codes, types, case types. Different things happen. Sometimes they come in, right, and they go straight into a case file, and it's fine. Other times it needs to route here, it needs to go for signature, it needs to go to another place to get completed, it needs to get file stamped, it gets docketed. There's a lot of things that might take place. We can evaluate that and determine that. Well, this is this type of a case, this is this type of a document, and it was submitted in this time frame. Now we know exactly where to take it, where to send it, and where to route it. And what's even more important is we can have that dynamically be able to be adjusted. So you might say, well, typically we go this route, but we want to change that. So nobody now has to program it. You can simply go in and change a code, and that will automatically change the routing on the fly. So to be able to have rules in place and be able to dynamically keep those up to date is very powerful. Another thing is parallel processing. So again, if a document came in and I need to see it, and another individual needs to see it, what do? They either wait for me to be done, or we photocopy it, right? With With OnBase, you can have everybody in this room could view the same document at the same time in different workflows if we all had the security rights to do so. And we're only storing the document one time. Okay? So that's a huge advantage to being able to send things to two places at once. Right? So now someone can be working and someone else can be working on the exact same document. We don't have to wait for it to be finished with one process if we don't want to. Sometimes a process will feed another, but that doesn't always have to be the case. And leads us to accountability, right? We talked about paper. There's security concerns, right? We don't know with a piece of paper who looked at it. There's no way to track that, right? You know the person you gave it to saw it, but other than that, who knows? Accountability is part of that is security. We know who's getting the document based on their secure access rights. We also know what type of work they're doing, right? You can put these little service level agreements is kind of a term used around to say, you know, when a document comes in, it should be through this process, this step, within 4 hours. That accountability is going to say, hey, it's been 5 hours. It's not through this step yet. There's a problem here. And it can notify people. It can escalate that. It can send email notifications, text messages, whatever you need, so somebody knows, hey, go look at this. I might walk in there and look and find out, looking in my dashboard view of the workflow and say, oh, you know what? It was just an influx came in. They're working them. It's going to be done. No problem. Or I might look and say, oh, you know what? Terry's off today. That explains why the queue's building up. I need to go in here and reassign this work. Okay? So having that foresight to see what's going on in a process before it becomes an issue is a huge benefit. And it's all going to lead back to this accountability where users now have to perform things based on the defined schedules and things that you've outlined for them. And reporting and monitoring is always going to be huge in any area. So to be able to report on how things are being processed and being able to see real-time statistics of where things are in a workflow process so you can take action to fix those problems. I mean, also reporting, you know, we see this in a lot of areas, private sector as well as public. You know, if you think about the commissioners and things who really, you know, elected officials who need some concrete things to back them for re-elections. If they can show reports saying, we've sped up this, we can process this many more cases a week, we can get through them quicker, we've saved this much money, all of that in a hard copy document that you can show to the public who votes for you, that's incredible. Those are things that we didn't have before. Unless somebody wants to take the time to go and document all this, which we all know nobody has that time today. Okay? So these are some of the huge advantages to why we want to move to workflow processes inside of the electronic system. So why OnBase? Okay, well, number one, OnBase is all point and click configuration. Okay, you can do custom coding if you had to, but it's not required. There's over 180 predefined rules and actions. So all you have to do is pick the rule. If you say, I need this to route to another individual, you say route to that, pick the rule that says route, and you tell it which queue it should go to, all by picking drop downs and things. And I'll show you a little bit of that, how easy it can be to add things to a workflow or create one. Things like system work. These are just automated things that users don't have to remember to do now. Like when it enters a queue, if somebody should be notified, the computer can send that notification automatically. You don't have to do that. It can update the status to say it's in review, it's been rejected. The computer can do all that for you, right? Those are just little minor things that you can take off the plate of your workers. Flexible and user configurable. So users can actually tweak things around. They can unpin panels in their workflow. If I decide I'm always in one queue, maybe I don't need to see that queue list. That's the one I'm always working in. It doesn't make sense. I can hide that panel. And now I can see a bigger list of documents or more related information or a wider image view. So users can kind of take a little ownership of their own screen and make it a little more conducive to how they do things on a day-to-day basis. Automatic email, right? So there's some people who will be in a workflow and that's part of their daily job. I'm going to come in, I'm going to go right into my workflow and start working items, right? A clerk, most of their life is going to be in a workflow process. So they probably don't need emails telling them there's an item in there, right? It's not necessary. But maybe someone's going to approve a purchase order or a time off request and things that are more of a casual type interaction, right? How do I know to go in my workflow? If I don't do it every day, I'm not going to remember, right? So we want to send your notifications saying, hey, you have something you need to look at. You have something to sign. You have something to approve. And they can go right into their email and click approve. Or they can click a link and go into the workflow if they wanted to. Okay? So let the computer send that. If someone from the public wants to submit a FOIA request into the county, right, they can fill out an e-form. When that gets into the OnBase workflow, what can workflow do? Send them an email right back saying, thank you, we've received your request, right? How many times do you buy something on Amazon or eBay, right? And you're like, I'm not sure it went through. That email comes through, and you're like, okay, I got the confirmation email, right? People want that. People need that confirmation. Let the computer do all that for you. Takes that headaches away from the individual users. There's timers, okay? This is things that you're doing that you got to remember to do on certain intervals or on a daily basis, and the computer can remember that for you. So I don't know about you guys, but my memory's not quite as good as it used to be, but the computer's memory just keeps getting better, okay? So if you're waiting for a supporting document to come in, you can just say, I'm waiting for this document, and put it in a hold queue. The computer can every hour, every 5 minutes, every day, whatever you want it to do, check. Is that document here? Nope, okay, I'll wait. Next time that timer triggers, it's going to go, is the document here? Oh, it is here. It wakes up, it routes automatically back into a queue and lets you know that document has arrived. Okay? So you don't have to remember to do some of those things. Load balancing is a way to organize queues so that only certain people access certain pieces of a queue. So we'll get into this in a minute, but if you had 30 people in your department all working certain types of documents, you don't need to create 30 different queues for them to go into. You can create one. And based on your rules, when I log in, I only see the certain documents relevant to me. If I only work a certain case type or a different type based on date ranges or alphabetical, however you want to organize it, first in, first out type thing. When it comes in, we just assign it to each person. The next time, we just keep going around the table. Or it can go, this person has the least amount of things in their queue, they get the next item. Okay? There's a lot of ways to organize how work gets assigned. And then security. So with every aspect of OnBase, including the workflow, everything is securable, meaning the workflow you can see, the queues you can access, the documents you can see related, the tasks you can execute, everything security driven. Right? I might log into a queue and I see 4 different tasks. My manager logs in the exact same queue. They may have 6 tasks or 7 just because they're a different user group than me. They have some other options to do. Okay? All of that built in the same security model that OnBase utilizes. So some of the concepts we want to get through today about how we do things in the workflow world. Number 1 is the life cycle. So this is an OnBase kind of coined term for the start and end of a defined workflow process. Okay? Sometimes we'll say, I've created 6 workflows. There are 6 different life cycles. Okay? So there's a start and end point to each one of those. That's kind of why they use the life cycle term. Now, one life cycle can feed another, right? So as soon as this completes one set of routing rules and things, it automatically triggers another workflow process to start. Right? There's no limit to how many times or how many different processes can be fed. Within each life cycle is 1 or more queues. Okay? We'll see this in the product as we kind of move forward. So the different queues are the different kind of buckets that it might go to, the different steps or stages sometimes that the documents might flow through. It's not always linear that drops through. It might bounce around to different queues and things based on what people do to the documents. When I access a queue, it becomes my inbox. Okay? My work basket is another term that we see quite often. So I know in there I have 10 items in my work basket. I need to go in there and work those 10 items out until I've completed them. Once they're completed, they automatically leave my inbox. They go either to somebody else's or maybe they've completed the process completely and now they're just accessible. Anything that leaves a workflow is still a retrievable document in OnBase. It's just not inside of a workflow process anymore. Okay? We have filters we can apply. So you can kind of organize how you're seeing your inbox, right? Maybe I want to organize it by case type. Maybe I want to organize it by the date or the date it arrived, right? So when you're looking at a docket list for hearings and things like that, I want to see just the morning docket events, and then after, I want to see the afternoon ones and so forth. So you can filter to see only what you need to. Or maybe the judge says, I might have to go leave early. I want to see what's on the docket for tomorrow. I can change my filter and see everything listed for tomorrow. Just different ways to get to that information. Tasks are going to be the little actions, the little buttons you'll see that I can click on. Okay? If you need to update a status of something and route it to the next step, we don't want you to change the keywords and then move it off to somewhere else. Why don't you just click one button? Let the status update automatically and move for you. If you've done something, we don't even need you to say, I'm done. The rules can just run and say, yep, everything's been done, it's gone. Right? When a judge signs a document, hit save, it automatically routes back to the clerk or whoever needs to see it. They don't need to see, yes, I've signed it. That's an extra step that's unnecessary. Okay? eForms, you'll see this anywhere. We use eForms very intensely throughout OnBase. They're just ways to store information. Okay? eForm can be a document itself that somebody fills out and submits, or it can be just a container, a way to display information. So again, if we're integrating with an ERP or a case management system and you need to see data in there that's not a keyword in OnBase, we can just get that information and display it to you in an electronic form. Again, so you don't have to take the extra step and go into that other system now, because you may have to open it, you may have to log in, you may have to retrieve the data you want and go through multiple clicks on a screen to get to that data. That's 4, maybe 5 extra steps when you can just see it all there in front of you automatically. The roles, groups, we talked a little bit about the load balancing, but you can create different roles and groups. Now, OnBase security is built on groups, so I could have one group have access to a particular step of a workflow, but you can also define it deeper. So even within that group, maybe there's 2 separate roles between that group. So you can even get a little more granular if you need to and assign that based on those. Okay? Workflow folders. So as some of you know, there's a way to dynamically link content together. So whether it's in a folder structure or based on a kind of a cross-reference, when I'm looking at one document, I might need to see other things related to that to help make my decisions. So having that information all available to me, again, in that single interface is very powerful without me having to go find that relevant data. So this is a screen of a workflow process inside of the OnBase world. Okay? So I'm just going to kind of outline the pieces, kind of what we talked about a little bit. So the lifecycle name, that's the name of the actual workflow process we're looking at, is listed right up at the top. And this is more of the traditional classic view of workflow. Again, you could move panels around and change it. The web client would look a little bit different as opposed to this, but most of you who are familiar with OnBase or the thick client layout, this should look somewhat similar. So that's the actual name of the process I'm in. Okay? These are all the various queues, the different steps that have been defined for this process. Now, based on security, I may only see 1 queue, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on what I do. A workflow could have 10 queues, but if I only interact with one, that's the only one I see. Okay? So I'm showing you all here just so you can understand there's multiple queues involved in this process. The next is the inbox. So if I'm clicked on this distribution queue, you can kind of see it's bolded over here. Okay? So when I'm clicked on that, it's going to show me those 2 items in my inbox. So there's a little document count next to the queue telling me how many items are assigned to me in this queue. And I can click in my inbox. When I select an item from the inbox area, it'll show me that, and this is my main document. Whether it's a paper scan document that came in, electronically received, or an electronic form, like in this case. It can even be an object, data object, a case management object that we route through workflow. Okay? So now I can see what I need to, but maybe I need to see related information. So that can be all displayed in this other panel. So other documents, this one's asking for a public record request for an incident report and some other information. So OnBase can automatically find the incident report, witness statement, and the other documents that are related to what they've asked for. Automatically. I don't have to go hunt for anything.
How is it?
There has to be a common link. So that's a good question. There has to be a common link. So whether it's the date of an incident, the case number, In this case, it might be an accident report number or something like that, or police report number. Something like that would have to be entered so we can automatically find that information. And then once I have everything in front of me here, now I can make my decision on what I'm going to do now with this document. And at the very top now is, they used to put the tasks on the right side. They've all been moved to the top now, okay, with OnBase 13 and beyond here. So those are the actions I can do based on who I am and where we are in this workflow. Okay? So as we go to different queues, those tasks would change. Maybe they all change. Maybe there's some that can be executed from the same queues or different queues, the same tasks. But a lot of times those will change because in different steps you need to do different things. So when we want to design a workflow, where do we start? Right? Everybody has whiteboards nowadays, right? The chalkboards are a thing of the past, unless you may have a couple chalkboards around. There's an interesting story about the chalkboards. A school was going to go buy all new whiteboards and replace it, and it was going to cost like $100,000 or something to replace them. And then that company came in with the paint, and they said, we can just paint all your chalkboards with the whiteboard paint. And it cost them like 20 grand, and they saved over $80,000 or something. And they just painted their old chalkboards. So just an interesting story. I thought that was fun. But anyway, so this is a way to start a process. So these are my cues, right? These are the different steps it could go through. So when you start it, you really get your whiteboard out. How do we do things today? You draw your boxes. Things come in. We need someone to review it. Then if it's good, I'm going to assign it. They're going to work the item. It's completed. If there's a problem, I can reject it, or maybe I need to route to my manager because I don't know what to do with it. Okay? So when you start, this is the designer tool inside OnBase. You can literally start graphically. Anybody can put a box on the screen, put in a name, and pick the little picture, right? Those are important. We need good pictures so we know what we're doing. And then you just draw your arrows. This is the way it should go. Okay? Once we have the design in place, these are the different cues we want. We kind of go into more of the architecture of the whole workflow. Once we've created it, it will show up, the same cues now will show up in a list format here. And I just need to put the guts in, that plumbing in of how does it get from one step to the other? Are there certain things that are required of me before I can advance it to the next step? So you kind of build out that logic. And it's all if-then logic, right? Does the keyword exist? Yes. If it does, do this. If it doesn't, do that. Okay? So you don't have to be a programmer to be able to take advantage and create workflow and even manage and maintain them and update them. I mean, it helps if you're a little tech savvy, right? But the point is, a lot of this can be kind of moved into some of the process owners off of your IT staff. Because IT, we know, is swamped. They have tons of projects. If you say, hey, I need you to add one queue to this and one task, all right, well, maybe in 6 or 8 months, they might get to it, right? Because we know it's not the priority on the list. But if somebody who owns the process can go in here and they understand this logic, right? I think we all can figure out if-then logic, right? If it's true, do this. If it's not, do something else. We can figure this out, and we can be able to update this and make those changes. Some of the tools available to us inside of the OnBase product is the OnBase Studio, which we just briefly looked at. I'll go into it live in a minute. This is the new way to create workflows, manage workflows, update them, and publish them out for the users. Within there's a workflow doctor. This is a nice little tool that tells you if there's a component that you've started to configure but didn't finish, right? So you may have gone in there and set up a queue and said, hey, route this item, but you never said route it where. So when you go into the doctor, it'll say, hey, this is incomplete. You told me you want to route it, but you didn't tell me where to put it. So before you publish it and try to test it and realize it doesn't work, it's telling you everything that's not going to work if you publish this right out of the gate. Okay? Document generation. Okay, this is another tool. This is great, especially when your processes change. If I go tweak a workflow or add a couple things to it, what just happened to all my documentation, right? It's out of date. Does anybody have a document specialist on staff who maintains documentation all day, right? Nobody does, right? But that's a necessary evil. That has to be changed all the time. You have new staff coming on board. You don't want to give them an old user guide explaining queues that don't exist anymore. So within OnBase, you can click a single button and it regenerates your entire document with all the new steps and everything in it automatically. So it's that simple to create these guides. And it's based off a Word template. So you can structure the template how you want, right? If you're familiar with iDoc Creator or Document Comp, that's kind of the underlying backbone of this utility. But so you have a template that's pre-filled with all of that workflow information, right? So that's a huge advantage to keeping that information up to date. Another is the designer tool for creating forms. We talked a lot about e-forms. There's traditional e-forms where you can go and create in whatever you'd want, or you can start using the Unity form designer and create these forms in a matter of minutes without knowing any programming. Okay? So this is the OnBase Studio. We'll go into it live in a minute, but I just want to highlight the areas so when you get there, you're familiar with it. So this area is just a tree view of your processes and their queues laid out in kind of a linear fashion. So you select the one you want, and you can kind of drill into what piece you want to look at or configure. In the middle is that graphical representation. So you always kind of know the flow as you've designed it or whiteboarded it out. And then the configuration. This is where you actually tell it. So if you say, hey, send an email notification, it's going to say, well, what email do you want me to send? You create an email template, and you tell it which template to use. So this is where you finalize the settings, tell it which queue to route to, and those types of things. Okay. This is the little bit about the workflow doctor. It's in that same studio, but at the bottom, you can open the doctor area. And this is just going to tell you if there's something not right with your workflow as the way you've configured it. So this one's telling me here at the bottom that the reason the description recipient has not been configured. Okay? So I said, at this step, send an email automatically, use this template, and then I left it. And it's saying, well, you did that, but you didn't tell me who to send it to. So it's not going to work. It's not going to go anywhere until I finish that step. And more importantly, now I can click right on that line item, and it'll take me to the spot in there and open the configuration panel automatically. So if you did have 50 workflows, you don't have to go and hunt through and find where that actual problem was, okay? Just those little time savers to take you right into that problem, then you can pick the recipient and move on. Okay, the document generator. There's a couple ways to generate documentation. One is a configuration report, right? This may be more important to the people who are working on the workflow processes themselves and configuring them. So if there's a problem and we need to backtrack or go back and figure things out, we can get a full configuration report telling us what we changed. It'll say, oh, so-and-so went in there and they added this step. They routed it over here, which is new. Highlight what's new about the workflow. What's different than what it was when we started. And there's also this create documentation, which I highlighted on the other one, where now we can pick from our templates a user guide or administrative type guide, and it will take all of the configuration info of that workflow and build it right into that. So you pick the guide you want, you hit generate, it generates this into a template format telling you information about the workflow, the steps, what each action will do, and all of that data. Okay? So this is a great tool now to get that documentation created and make it sure it's up to date. It's very easy to generate. Unity forms. These are a couple types of electronic forms created with the Unity designer. Okay? They can be internal use forms, like time off requests and different things like that. They can be containers of case data, or they can be public-facing forms. So I can create these forms and publish them right to our website so the constituents can fill out. Maybe there's a pothole in my street and I want to fill out a request that goes right to a workflow for your public works department or your road commission, however you guys handle that. Maybe it's a request for, a public document that isn't available on the site. Maybe I need a certified document, different things I might want to make requests for right on the website. Right? Not everybody's going to do it, but if you can eliminate people coming up to counters by empowering them to do some of this from their homes, you're going to free up a lot of time for those clerks and those counter workers. So this is the form designer tool. We'll go into this too in a little bit. The biggest thing about this is there's no coding. Okay? I mean, does anyone even know what HTML stands for anymore? Right? Who cares? We don't need to know it. We can go and it's all drag and drop, point and click. We create this form. A form like this can be done in 5 minutes. Okay? So what I want to do is actually go and show you a little bit of this, right? I'm talking a lot, but how easy is it to update a workflow? How easy is it to create a new form? Well, I'm going to do those for you here on the fly. Okay? I'm doing this without a net, and we got plenty of time. Now, I don't know when this class ends, actually. But so what I'm going to do is go into a virtual machine here. This is a workflow process, similar one we kind of looked at in the screenshot. I have, again, some queues. Here's my inbox, my related information, my driving document, and my tasks up at the top. Okay? So how does a document like this get put into a workflow? Well, if I minimize this for a minute, and I go out to a website, I just open up Internet Explorer. I have a mocked up website from the Detroit website. I'm just going to click a link that I put in here. So when I need to create a request, I have an issue with a water line near me, and I want someone to come and take a look at it. So I can click this link, and it will go ahead and open a form for me. Okay, this is a Unity form. It's in OnBase, but it's just made available outside to anybody. This person doesn't need an OnBase license or anything. Anybody can fill out a form. They don't need to know OnBase even exists. Okay? So I can put in some information. I put in some information. You see a database lookup happened automatically. Just some of the things available. I'll say I have a water leak. I can go and attach a document of my water leak right here, right into the e-form. I can submit this right into the world, okay? I can get a little confirmation, thanks, you've successfully submitted this. I would also probably send them an email notification letting them know we've received your request. Okay? If I go back into OnBase world now, my request had 2 items. If I go ahead and kind of click on it, it'll jump to 3 now because it just refreshed. That document entered from externally automatically went into a workflow. Now, as a person in my day-to-day role, I would monitor this queue or get emails tell me to go into the queue, and I can open this up and I can see the information in here. I can scroll down. If I look through this, I can see related information here. I can see a work order needs to be created. There's a report, service request, all the other things that go along with it. I can open up the photo that they submitted. This is another document inside of the OnBase world, and I can see that. Everything given to me in one location, right? I haven't had to hunt for anything. Everything's here. And now I can do what I need to do. I can approve this, assign it to the appropriate group, move it on through to the next step. I can deny the request, whatever the case might be. Maybe this is not valid, right? I submit. It leaves my queue. It drops back down to 2. It's out of my work area. It's into either somebody else's or it's done with the workflow, depending. Okay? Yep.
When you deny that request, would it email the person that requested it saying
Yes.
your request has been denied?
Yep.
Please call or whatever?
That's why I forced a reason. So it would email saying it's been denied for this reason. For further inquiries, you would contact the water department directly or what have you in this case. But absolutely, all the email notifications go out back and forth. Not just to notify somebody who submitted, but to status. If I'm the manager and I want to know when a work item's done, when it's done, just send me a quick text saying work item 2023 has been completed. Perfect, right? What I want to do now is, let's say I have another item here, and this one's telling me there's a water main break, right? And that's a big issue. I'm not just going to create a work order and put it in the queue. This needs to go up the chart, right? So what do? Well, my tasks say I can approve it, complete it tonight. Well, those don't really fit what I need to do. So what I want to do is go into the configuration and actually create a way for me to route this as an emergency. So I'm going to put a new task in on the fly here and route it over to my manager. So I have a queue that says supervisor review here. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close out of this. I'm going to log out. I'm going to go into the OnBase Studio. So this is the development platform for workflow. Okay? I don't want to get too far into the covers, but I just wanted to show you real quick how I can quickly add a new task. So I'm going to go down to the workflow process. That's the work orders. Okay, I'm just going to kind of manage my screen resolution for you. In my request review, if I expand it, System work is the things the computer's going to do automatically for you. Ad hoc tasks are what the user can do. So here I have the 4 tasks, which were my buttons at the top. I'm just going to add a new one. Okay? So I'm going to go, there's a couple ways to do it. You can, first I have to check out the workflow. So that's kind of revision control, so we know who's updating it. I'm going to add a new ad hoc task. Okay? And I'll just call it emergency request. I'm naming it. We will call it emergency. Now we say who can execute this task. What groups should actually be able to execute it? Who will see that button to be able to click it? You can go through and pick any of the user groups that you have assigned. So I'm just going to put it to this manager group. I'm going to finish. It puts that task right onto my screen now. Okay? I would go into my icon and pick an icon that represents what an emergency might be. And you can do whatever pictures you want. Right? So I'm just going to pick a exclamation point, let's say. And there's default icons already in the system, a couple hundred, but you can obviously create your own. Okay. Now I need to say, well, what happens when that button's clicked? Okay. Well, I'm going to say route to my supervisor. Supervisor. Okay. So now I have to pick what task it is. Okay. And if I didn't pick this, you'll see that there's all these different rules and actions I can pick. Again, no coding has to be done. I'm going to transition this. So as I start typing transition, I'm going to pick transition the item. And it's saying transition the current document that's in this workflow from the queue it's in to where. You can see it's highlighted in red. Where do we want it to go? Well, I want it to go to the supervisor review. Okay? I save my changes. I check it back in. Now it's available for everyone else to see, whoever has the security rights. I'm going to reset my application server here so those changes take effect now. So that's what I did with that command prompt. That's like an IIS reset, something like that if you have any admins in the room. Okay. I'm going to log in again. It'll take a second because the first time you log on after a reset has to initialize everything. Okay, I'm going to go back to my workflow area. I'm going to go into my work orders queue again. Now you'll see I have emergency show up for me automatically. So if this is an emergency, I hit the button, it leaves my queue. I've dropped down to 1 now. It automatically routed it. If I scroll down into the supervisor review queue, now it has 1 item. Okay, so it was that easy to go in and create a task that routes it somewhere else. I would probably send a notification, do this, do some other things. Okay, we just want to show you how simple it can be. I mean, obviously, workflow process can be very involved, but you want to keep that in mind as you're designing and things. But to be able to make minor changes is pretty easy to do. You don't have to call ImageSoft to make every little change, right? If you have people trained, they can go in here and do those. And we want you to take ownership of your system so you can do these things. You don't have to rely on us to do everything. We'll help in any capacity, but we don't always have to. Okay, so that's one way to go in and access the configuration tool and be able to add things. And as soon as I reset my application server, it's available to those groups who have the security rights. Okay. The other thing we wanted to show you was the eForms. So one of the other tools available. Underneath this administration area, you'll have the ability to get into the Unity Form Designer. Okay, this is a way to create eForms. So I'm going to create one real quick. I'll create a brand new one. Let's say it's a purchase order, purchase requisition. We'll call it Government Summit Requisition. Okay, and I'll just hit finish. So it's going to start me off with my blank page. Now all I have to do is, you have all these different controls you can add. So whether you want someone to type in their information. You'd put on boxes for them to fill out memo fields. All of that data is available. As you scroll through, you'll see different ways you can add different controls, a way to get electronic signatures, attach documents. And here's all the keywords that are assigned to this document. So if you're familiar with document types and keywords in OnBase, these are the keywords I can put on here as well. So the point is, when somebody fills out a form like this, they've already indexed it for you. So there's no indexing step, there's no scan or capture step, because it's already electronic, right? So anything you can make an electronic form, you've just cut two huge things out of the process. Nobody has to intake it, and nobody has to index it. Okay? So now you would just add the fields over and organize this, and there's also properties you can add to say who created the form, when did it create, when did it come in, some of those types of things. So maybe I'm going to add a section, okay, onto the form. Then I go down to my label, and I just say submitter info, okay? So this is the panel down on the side where you can make all the changes, okay? And then you would put in whatever fields you'd want. So I would put in, maybe it's their employee ID. Then we want to know who they are, so I'm going to drag that over. I want to know who their manager is, so I can route it to that appropriate step. Okay, employee IDs has a data lookup to go to our HR system and pull back who the manager and everybody is automatically. So if I click on the employee ID, I can go down to where it says the autofill, and I can say, yeah, use the employee ID autofill. Okay? And at any point, you can do this test drive, so you can start seeing how your form's going to work. It can be internal or external autofills. So internal ones are where OnBase stores it in its own database, or external where it calls out through an ODBC style connection. It can also be a script where it executes a Unity script or a VB type script to make a call if it needs to be more of a web service based call out to the system. Okay, so you can also, if you're going to create a new one, you can go through and pick the type of document. So you'd create the document first. You can also hit the Add Keywords button here. And every keyword that's been identified will just automatically be put onto the form already to start with. Okay? So you, again, would just add any other fields you'd want. You can add something like a repeating section. And what that does is if I add a couple fields into there, as you add sections, those whatever fields you've identified will repeat. So when you're doing like a PO, sometimes you're buying multiple line items, right? And you don't know. There could be 2, there could be 30. You don't have to create 50 rows just in case they need that many. You just create the one, and dynamically they build them as they go. You can also add things like, if this was going to be a date field, you can turn it into a date field. Okay? Call it whatever you'd want. And then when you start to test drive it, see, I have a currency field and I didn't label what kind of currency to use. See, it's stopping me. Okay. So any of these vendor name is automatically linked to a data lookup. So it's going to show me a list of vendors and all of that information available. If I wanted to add a date field in here, let's call it request date. And then we want to make sure it's not text. It is a date. I go into here, I click on that, you get the calendar pop up automatically. So the point is repeating fields, signatures, attaching documents, calendar drop-downs, all of this done, no coding. I'm just dragging, dropping, and picking some things. Obviously, there's some training and things you really want to go through to understand how all these controls work. But the point is you can do it pretty quickly on the fly and get these published out to your users. You would go into the share form. Visibility is where you set security. Share allows you to publish it out to a website. And publishes just makes it available for somebody who has the permissions to access it within OnBase. Okay, so it's all this done from that client tool. So again, you can take some ownership into the business users. They can kind of take control of their forms a little bit. And if you needed to change something or add a field, you can do so without having to rely on a programmer to help you. Okay. So a couple of last things here. When you're getting ready to develop workflows, you need to prepare, you need to understand what the process is, and you need to document everything, right? You need to write down how we're doing it today. Get everybody involved who needs to and who understands the process. You need to get the buy-in. You need not only the top level who want to do it, but you need the end users involved too. Because if you design it and throw it at them and they don't like it, you know, it's going to fail because they're not going to want to use it. So you need everybody involved in the process from the get-go. You need to evaluate how you do things too, because with the electronic tools, there's ways to automate things and change things, right? We ask the question, well, why do you do it that way? Why? We don't mean anything by it, but we ask that. It's okay to ask that. The answer we get a lot is, well, that's how we always did it. But that's not the answer. That's not the right answer. You need to know why you're doing something, because there could be a lot better way to do that. Or you might not even need to do that step at all. Okay? And start small. So, you know, you don't want to do an entire, you know, county workflow system in one shot. So you want to start with smaller processes. And remember, they can feed each other. So start one defined workflow and let it feed another one. Okay? And the rest of the slides will all be available to you on the website and stuff later too. So if you guys want to get a copy of this and see some of the other things that are in here. Okay? So that's about all I have. There is other material you can get from the OnBase site or ImageSoft directly. Okay? Just remember, start small, keep going, you will get there eventually. All right, thank you guys.